Hey, today I'm going to stop by the National Auto and Truck Museum in Auburn, Indiana. This is actually a pretty nice museum. I've been to it before. Just right over there is the Auburn Duesenberg Museum, but I'm going to save that video for another time. It's sort of a separate museum. But this is a really nice museum. Let's go take a look and see what they've got in there. The building was built in the 1920s and is the original Auburn factory maintenance building. They used to park new Auburns in here while they were waiting for delivery, and today it houses this really top-notch museum. So it's just a really cavernous area. We're going to kick off this tour with this 1910 Pratt L-Car. The L-Car buggy manufacturer had been around for a number of years and switched over to manufacturing cars, and they'd survive all the way up into the Great Depression as the L-Car manufacturing company. The side lights here are kerosene. Then we have an acetylene gas generator down there for the headlights. This is a right-hand drive because we hadn't really standardized on left-hand drive by this point. I wanted to point out something you see on a lot of early open cars, the nicer ones, is on the back of the front seat is this robe rail. For inclement weather, you'd have a large lap blanket for your back seat passengers. So a lot of cars supplied that brass robe rail just to hold that lap blanket. This car is equipped with a speedometer, so let me show you how those early speedometers worked. We just have a gear and a pinion attached to the wheel, and that's all there is. Next up, we have a pair of Cord L29s. These are America's first front-wheel drive production cars, and there below the radiator you can see the front-wheel drive differential. These two cars were final assembled in this very building. We have a nice coupe, and over here we have a cabriolet convertible looking very nice in the black with the orange stripes. There's louvers in front of the radiator that were thermally activated and would open or close to allow more or less cooling. Here is a 1903 Ford Model A. This is the fourth oldest Ford in existence and the first one to feature a rear seat. Here you can see where the rear seat bolts on to the normal car right along that seam. This is a rear entrance tonneau. The door is around in the back. This features a two-cylinder engine that was actually made by the Dodge brothers for Ford. There you can see the door. That's how you get into the back seat. That's why they call it a rear entrance tonneau. Nice open differential there. I'm sure that wouldn't pick up any road dirt. Well, here's something. This is a 1982 Packard. That's possible because by the mid-1960s, the Packard name, the rights to the name had sort of expired. So they were bought by a guy named Bud Bailiff. And Bud coach-built Packards on other chassis. This one is a 1982 Riviera underneath there. And he built these cars under the Packard name all the way up until 1992 when he stopped and he sold the right to someone else. And I read just yesterday that they're for sale again, so you can own Packard. Now here's a nice car. This is a 1954 Kaiser Darren. This is essentially a sports car body built on Henry J. mechanicals, designed by Dutch Darren. Just a beautiful car. 57 Chevy there, looking good in the black. Next to it, we've got a 1959 Chevy with the bat wings. This is a former Maumee, Ohio police car. This is the real deal, not something somebody's made up. So this is all original livery on here. We've got the original radio equipment inside. Modifications we've got to the car. We've got this big fender-mounted siren with the red light in the front. Then, of course, we've got the bubble gum machine mounted up on top. And then we've got some red lights then mounted in the back. And what better to park next to a cop car than this 1969 Charger? Now, this just isn't any Charger. This is the General Lee, one of the ones actually used on the show. And if you've ever seen the opening credits, this is the car shown in the opening credits jumping over the Hazard County police car there. That was an 82-foot jump. The interior is a little ratty-tat-tat, so that's obviously unrestored, but that's okay. I did want to point out that this car actually does have door handles. Not that Bo and Luke ever really figured out how to use those. Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane never did catch them Duke boys. Hey, here's a DeLorean. Instead of the polished stainless steel, this one was actually painted red. And I really like it. I make no bones about the fact that I kind of like DeLoreans, maybe a little too much. But this one is looking really sharp. Here's a 1951 Kaiser Henry J. This is actually the car that Kaiser Darren was based off of. This is sort of an early attempt at producing an American compact car. So they eliminated a number of things to try and keep the cost down. Very classic and well-known design, very popular with the hot rod set. Moving back in time just a little bit, here's a 1948 AMP. This was built by American Metal Products to be sort of a small, compact, everyman's car at a low cost. They eventually sold the rights to Kaiser, and this became the basis of the Henry J that we just looked at. And as you look at it, there's a real lack of features here to try and keep the cost down. Look at that. There's no trunk lid. The Henry J didn't have a trunk lid either at first. Neat little piece of history here. The museum's got your Mopar covered. Here's a 66 Dart with a 71 Dodge Charger, then a 66 Dodge right after that. This is then followed by a 68, a 67, and a 66. Just a lot of really quality cars here, and there's just far too many for me to hit every one. So I'm just going to try and give you a sample of what they've got here. But just a lot of nice cars, a little Corvette back there, and then an Auburn behind that. There's a number of race cars here. Here's a 1965 Cobra. That's actually a clone. And here's a 1969 Barracuda. This is race prepared by Sox and Martin. It's had a number of engine changes, but currently has an experimental 444 cubic inch Hemi making 500 horsepower. Next up, we've got a 67 Charger. No signage on this one, but judging by the graphics on the side, this looks like this was raced by Al Ekstrand, who's actually a famous guy in drag racing circles. And apparently this was one that must have raced in time in England. Next up, we've got a 69 Camaro. This one is special in that it was ordered through Yanko Chevrolet. Yanko Chevrolet was a Chevy dealership that was known for modifying cars, specifically with the Chevy 427 engine. And there you have the Yanko graphics on the side. Very rare car. Speaking of rare cars, here's a 1970 Cuda. This one is serial number 3. The first two were disassembled and were not sold. This is the first one that was actually sold to the public, so this is recognized as being the first Hemi Cuda. This one was apparently also disassembled, but was later reassembled and sold. It differs from the later production ones because there's no CUDA graphics on the side and a couple of other differences. Here's a 1930 American Austin. Following the wild success of the Austin in England, Sir Herbert Austin came over here to try his hand in the American market, but just couldn't gain a foothold due to stiff competition from the Model A. Parked next to it over here is a 1952 Crosley, another attempt at a small car in the United States market. I always really like the Crosley. I don't know why. It's just a cute little car. Hey, nothing small about this. 1968 Ford Country Squires station wagon with yacht paneling and roof racks. There is nothing not to love here. I would drive the hell out of this car. Just a beautiful piece of machinery. Next to it over here, we got another nice station wagon. This is a 1970 Buick Estate wagon. Then over here, we got another nice Ford. This is a 1958 Country sedan station wagon. I believe that's one step down from the Country Squire trim level, but still just a really sharp looking car here. I think the red and white paint scheme really works. Hey, it's an airplane. This is a 1929 Pete and Pole Air Camper. Pete and Pole is a home-built plane. The Pete and Pole company will sell you the plans. They're still in business, and you can build your own plane using a Model A engine. That's right. That is a Model A Ford engine right there. You can build an airplane around it, and it will fly as long as you've done it right. Here's a 1912 Rio truck. I think I mentioned in previous videos that after selling his first company, Oldsmobile, Ransom E. Olds went on to form another company and used his initials REO, which later built the REO Speedwagon. That's a real thing. This is a nice early truck. I always like chain drive trucks. They're kind of cool. Over behind that, we've got a 1941 GMC. This is apparently a recreation of a shell tanker truck, but it's a really fantastic job. A nice looking truck. Over next to that, we've got a 1925 Mack AC. This is just a massive truck to stand next to, just a big monster thing. The Mack AC has this distinctive hood to it because you'll notice that the radiator actually sits behind the engine. So it's a little bit backwards, so it gives this sloped hood. The Macks were shipped over to England in large numbers during World War I, and due to their toughness, they were given the nickname of Bulldog. And that name has really stuck with Mack to this day. That's why you still see the Bulldog hood ornaments. Even a big truck like this, still chain drive, and just a nice looking truck. You don't really see these. Speaking of things you don't really see, here is a 1956 White 3000. This one features a rare sleeper cab. This is pulling a 1949 Mechanical Handling Systems Clipper. They made car hauling trailers in the 30s or 40s and 50s with this aerodynamic design and their signature porthole windows. This can haul up to 4 cars. Just a wonderful little piece here. This was bought actually brand new by Bill Hurrah for his collection. And they're really hard to find these days. I really like the little fold-up steps here to get up to the top when you're attaching cars up on top. That's kind of a little neat feature. Speaking of neat, here is a General Motors Futureliner bus. These things were part of the General Motors Parade of Progress in the 1950s, and there were several of these, and they would caravan around and set up in a town for about a week. Each one was unique and had a little General Motors display in it. Here's a little model showing how they all looked when they were set up, where you've got all these buses, and each one was unique, and then there was a big tent, and it was all about General Motors and what they were doing. It's just a wonderful, neat bus. There were originally 12 of them like this. Many of them have been restored, and they're owned by different people. But some of them are out there, and nobody knows where they're at or what happened to them. So maybe they're still yet to be discovered in the back of some junkyard or out in a field somewhere. So keep your eyes peeled. Just great things to see. Here's a 1960 Buick LeSabre, followed by a 1959 Cadillac Eldorado Baritz. Then we've got a 1957 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and followed up that with a 1959 Studebaker Silver Hawk. After the Studebaker, there's a 1956 Imperial. That's the one with the little add-on taillights there. I always thought that was sort of a interesting feature. Then finally, rounding out this row, we have a 1962 Chrysler 300. Here is a 1958 Edsel Corsair. At the time, a lot of people really didn't like the styling, but I think people nowadays have kind of gotten used to it, and it's a little bit more beloved than it was when it originally came out. It really isn't a bad car. It just was poor market timing. It was a little bit higher priced car, and there was an economic downturn right in 1958, so it really didn't catch on. Plus, the styling didn't really help. Hey, here's something I just really super like. This is a Walker electric truck, just a giant piece of machinery with tons of patina. This thing is just right up my alley. If they need somebody to drive it around to a car show, I am your man on that. Looks like we've got some big bins down there that would have held the batteries. Just a big, probably in-city delivery truck. As a former resident of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, I was immediately drawn to this bad boy. This is a 1927 Clower Snow-Go snow thrower. This is just a big self-propelled truck. It uses a 140 horsepower engine and gears down through 3 transmissions. Next to it here's a little Snow-Go walk behind. I should mention that I am now downstairs in the maintenance building. This is the basement, and this was Auburn's experimental area. This is where the first Cord 810s were hand-built, and this is where a lot of magic happened down here. This was a very secretive area, and they were always on the lookout for spies from Ford and others. Now it houses an extensive truck collection. They kind of have an emphasis on international here. As you can see, I'm walking past a lot of old international trucks, but that's not all they have. Here's a Noble truck. These were made in Kendallsville, Indiana. Just a nice truck with a big wooden cab on it, which I very much like. Very utilitarian interior. The back end here is a direct drive, no chain. This is a worm drive, as you can see, so that's probably geared fairly low. Over next to it, we've got another one. This is a standard differential, but it's a chain drive that gives you a little bit different gearing. Here is a belly tank racer, and by belly tank, I mean an actual fuel tank. After World War II, a lot of auxiliary aircraft fuel tanks were left over and were sold on the open market, and many of them were turned into race cars in various configurations because they're very aerodynamic. This particular one is a current racer and will be seen at the Bonneville Salt Flats next year. Speaking of World War II, here is a International M14 half-track, 1/4 scale. This just isn't any model, though. This is actually a 1942 pre-production model that was made at the International facility from sketches, and this is the basis where they would have made probably some engineering drawings and finalized engineering before production actually started. So this is actually kind of a rare and interesting piece. Sticking with the World War II theme, here is an Air Force bomb hoist. This would be for delivering ordnance out to the aircraft for loading them on there. So this can transport air maintenance crew and has everything you need. This is all mounted on the back of a 1943 Chevrolet truck. Here's another Chevy of the same era, although this one is a little bit more utilitarian with just an all-purpose bed on the back. Moving over to the Dodge camp, here is a 1941 Dodge WC1. This is a 1.5-ton 4x4 truck that was delivered in 1941, so this is actually before the U.S. entered the war. Still in the wartime years, here's a 1942 Hudson Commodore. This is an unusual car in that this is a blackout model where most of the chrome, rather than being plated, was painted so you don't get that shine. This was built for export, so this is right-hand drive, although it was never really exported. This just sat in a government stockpile until it was originally sold to a rancher out in Wyoming who was apparently deemed essential enough where he was able to purchase a car during the war. Here is a 1911 Kirsch, a very small manufacturer, This one was originally a large touring car, then was converted to a school bus, and now is painted to look like a paddy wagon. This is sort of a micro manufacturer. They really only made 10 cars over the course of several years. This next one is a 1907 Kiblinger. These were made in Auburn, Indiana, actually in a building right across the street from where I'm standing right now. Kiblinger was a buggy manufacturer that eventually started making cars, and you can kind of see the buggy influence just a little bit there. Anyway, in 1908, the following year, they had to change their name to McIntyre. So this next one is the same company, but it's a 1910 McIntyre truck. And then we follow that with a 1911 McIntyre bus. And these are kind of neat because they're lined up here, and these were made like right here. Speaking of buses, here is a 1939 Kenworth. This is formerly from the Portland Fire Department and was an emergency rescue vehicle. This is, I believe, a support vehicle. It had its own generator on board for generating electricity. It has a big hole up there, which they say are for speakers, and a water tank with a stove and eating and washing area. So this would be a support vehicle if you had maybe a large forest fire or some other large event going on. The museum has a for sale sign in the windshield that didn't show. They were asking 30,000 OBO, so maybe they can be talked out of it. No sign on this one, but this is obviously a horse-drawn Standard Oil tanker wagon. I like the fact that this is vehicle number 0001. It's important to have all four digits on there after all. Anyway, just a nicely done tanker truck, and the oldest tanker truck that they've got here. They actually have a whole line of them right behind it. The next one is a 1931 Ford Model AA ton truck in Standard Oil colors, followed by a Diamond T painted in Texaco livery, and then a very nice 1950 Chevrolet in Gulf oil colors. That's just a nice looking truck there. Moving right along, we have a 1973 International Travelall. The Travelall was sort of International's answer to the station wagon, sort of akin to the Jeep Grand Wagoneer or Chevy Suburban. Just a overall nice utility truck. Parked next to it is another International Travelall. This one's a little older. This is a 1966 model, but these are both nice. Now I'm super curious, what are the 12 ways you can build a strong body using Wonder's soft whipped bread? No signage on this one either, but this is a 1950 Willys truck. You see these around every now and again, but I don't recall ever seeing one in dump truck configuration. So this one made this one a little bit unusual. Anyway, just a nice truck to see. Moving back over to International, here is a 1973 International 1010 pickup. International pickups are a little bit more rare, and I like to see them. This one has an older cap on the back. I think it just kind of adds to the overall vintage look to it. Sticking with the theme of just darn nice trucks, here's a 1940 Chevrolet KC half-ton pickup. Just nice, clean lines. At first glance, this one may look like a Dodge, but this is actually a Fargo from 1942. Fargo as a brand actually predates Dodge as part of Chrysler, but they were eventually phased out domestically, but still sold on the international market. This one actually is from Mexico, although at least in my neck of the woods, when you see a Fargo, it's usually a truck that's come down from Canada. I'm going to wrap things up here with this International Scout Rally pickup truck. This is a nice truck. No sign, so I'm not sure of the exact year here.
They made an International Scout SUV with a larger fiberglass removable top. This one also has a fiberglass top, and I think it's removable. Anyway, nice truck.
So that was the National Auto and Truck Museum in Auburn, Indiana. I hope you enjoyed it. I just showed you just sort of a portion of what they've got. I was here, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and they had sort of a different mix of cars, so I think they have sort of a constantly rotating collection. So just stop in anytime you're in the area. It's well worth the stop. Also well worth doing is checking out my other videos, which should be over here, and also subscribe to my channel, which the button for that should be over here. Anyway, until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.